Hey everyone, and welcome back to Small Engine Edge. Today we're going to talk a little bit about vendors that you should use while you're running your small engine repair business to get parts and supplies and different things. Last week we talked quite a bit about business credit and different vendors you can use to make yourself more money as you're doing that. Now we're going to go over a few of these vendors that you can use to get some of these OEM parts without having to be a dealer of those products. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button as we go along if you enjoy the content. So there's a very few large vendors out there of a lot of these outdoor power products. Many of them carry numerous different brands of these things all at once. For instance, to start off with Oscar Wilson, we use a lot. They've got all your MTD products, and they've got just an array of other products. Many are a little bit higher priced than other areas, but you can get all of these OEM parts without having to be a dealer. It's the same with a company called Meat-Art. They're a large one also. We've got Gardner. There's many other of these programs depending on your different areas, and many of these different companies depending on those areas. Oscar Wilson is strictly kind of center of the country, but there's other ones depending on whether you're East Coast or West Coast. It really depends on that, on your location, but some of them are nationwide. Now, for your Steels and your Echo parts and some other different brands, you're not going to be able to get those through an intermediary, unfortunately. But what you can do is you can reach out to your local dealer and tell them what you're trying to do, and normally they'll give you a pretty good discount. We had a good deal set up with a dealer down the road here, and they'd give us 20% off when we went to buy those things. Is that going to work for each and every one of you? Always no, but if you can't get a local dealer, there's many online dealers who still sell these parts that you can reach out to. Reach out to them, see if they're willing to give you a discount since you're going to buy all of your parts through them exclusively. And many of them will carry both Steel, Echo, and some of those other things, Billy Goat, some of the other products that maybe you can't get right off top. But don't stress out too much about being able to get the OEM parts besides at a retail price, because most customers are going to be certainly happy with your lower labor rate than they are going to be paying just a little bit more for parts. You know, if we have to buy something at retail, we still are going to mark it up. We're not going to mark it up as much as what we would if we bought it at a lower price, but we're still going to make at least 15 or 20%. I mean, that's the bottom line. If you can't make 15 or 20% on something, there's no reason to buy it and sell it. Sometimes you've really got to get down to the nitty gritty with these things, and you don't make a whole lot of money on those parts, but that customer is going to be happy and they're going to send you their other equipment, which you're going to get a better margin on parts. So don't stress too much about that with OEM parts. There's definitely ways to source those, and a lot of these different distributors are still going to be able to get you your Kohler, your Briggs, your Kawasaki, all these other parts without having to worry about being a dealer of those products. You've got Tough Torque and Hydro Gear. We use Oscar Wilson and Gardner for those things, Meat-Art for some of the other ones. Rotary, for instance. Rotary does aftermarket parts. They do some different things, but a lot of those are going to be great parts, and they're going to be a decent price and a decent margin for you. If you get a Rotary account, that's a good vendor for sure. All of these places are going to have some sort of minimum order that you're going to have to meet before you aren't going to get charged shipping. Normally shipping is going to be $10 to $13 if you don't meet these minimums. Rotary's got a pretty low minimum. That's going to be, I think, like $150. That's not a bad, amount of stuff. It may be a little high for you right as you're starting out, but try to meet those minimums. That way you save on that shipping cost. If you're only ordering, $30 to $50 worth of stuff as you're starting out, sometimes many of those things from any of these vendors are just going to be cheaper on Amazon. You should have an Amazon Prime account if you're doing small engine repairs. A lot of this stuff is going to be something you can get on Amazon, and many times if I go to my distributor, Power Distributors is one of my big ones we use for Briggs & Stratton parts. If I go to them, a lot of times those Briggs & Stratton parts are almost as expensive as what Amazon charges. Sometimes they're even going to be more than what Amazon charges, and I do a pretty good volume of sales with them. Why is that? Well, Amazon buys billions of dollars of this stuff every year, and they get a huge price discount, and then they're selling it at 10% above cost. I mean, there's no way that many of us can ever compete with that. So I check kind of different places for things when I buy stuff and see where I'm going to be able to get them the cheapest. Amazon is going to be one of those places, especially as you're starting out. And some of these vendors aren't going to work with you or give you an account until you've got a little bit more volume built up anyway. Some of them do have a minimum order, a $500 order or whatever that may be. For like power distributors, for instance, we get all our spark plugs there, most of them. So that wouldn't be a hard order starting out. Once you kind of figure out what you need, get a preseason order or whatever it is, if they'll give you some credit, and kind of start off from there. Then you don't have any minimum orders. Some of these companies will require you to order so much per year also, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. We use Safety Clean for our oil supply. You're going to need somewhere to get bulk oil as you start to do these things. Otherwise, you can use a local auto parts store, but that's going to be a lot more expensive. You're going to make a lot less margin if you're going to a farm and fleet or a farm store and buying oil than you are if you buy from Safety Clean. Safety Clean, a lot of times, we're under $3 a quart on synthetic blend oil if we buy it by the 55-gallon drum. Now that is super cheap. You make a great margin. You know, you're selling it for $9. So it's a very lucrative thing to do, buying it that way. And Safety Clean is nationwide as well as Canada. So that's not going to be something that you cannot get wherever you are. And Safety Clean will pretty much sell to anybody as far as I know. They used to deliver barrels of oil to my house, you know, so that's something. But your local auto parts store for supplies, your oil dries, your different carb cleaners and things like that, those are things that you're going to want to be able to source locally. Again, sometimes Amazon makes more sense on some of these things, but Clean Right. Now, for specialty parts, we use Clean Right for like pressure washer parts on commercial pressure washers and things like that. You can sign up to be a dealer and save some percentage. Like Florida Tool, we use them for tool parts and things like that. But many of these aren't going to be stuff that you, depending on what you're working on, are going to need. PHP Distribution, we use them a lot for portable heater parts. Again, if you're not working on portable heaters or hanging heaters or any of that, you're never going to need those accounts. Ethanol-free fuel is a huge one. Many of us anymore are selling canned fuels, which you can get like those canned Aspens or whatever you'd like to use, whatever you prefer as far as canned fuels go, but you've got to have somewhere to source ethanol-free fuel. We use an ethanol-free fuel station right down the road. There's 3 of them here in town. They just opened a brand new one. That's great. But if you don't have one around, you're really going to want to try to either find one, that or go with canned fuel. Use something like that from Oscar Wilson or wherever you prefer to buy it. But if you're not putting ethanol-free fuel in these things, say you work on something for a customer and it sits in the back for 6 months. When you go to start that thing, it's a 50-50 on whether it's going to start. That ethanol-free fuel's been sitting there for that entire time, whether you use a treatment or not. We do use treatments for our fuel, even though it is ethanol-free, but that's just to combat the moisture. That's 2-butoxyethanol. Either way, though, you've got to get a good source of ethanol-free fuel. A few of these vendors are going to be harder than others to get in touch with and continue ordering from, but as you grow, they're going to be working with you more and more, and you're going to get better and better deals as you increase volume. Do not hesitate to reach out to different companies. 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, yeah, everybody wants more business. So there's a lot of those online companies too that do many, many different brands and that will sign you up in a heartbeat if you call and reach out to them. Same thing with the local dealers. Go in and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Can you work with me? And see what they say. The worst they can say is no, and you walk out with nothing. But it only wasted 15 or 20 minutes of your time asking. Don't hesitate to reach out. You can go very far with this, but be persistent, be dedicated to what you're doing, and be very targeted with who you're working with and where you can get the best deals for what you're doing. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed the content. Thanks for watching.